Reparations for the descendants of African slaves in America has long been debated. Black lawmakers on different levels of government have tried to get reparation bills approved, but are usually met with overwhelming resistance. Until now. Just this week, the City Council of Asheville, North Carolina, unanimously voted to provide reparations to Black residents of the city. Not only did the council approve the reparations, but it issued an apology for the city's historic role in slavery, discrimination, and denial of liberties to Black residents. Asheville's City Council member Keith Young pushed for this resolution, and he joins me now. Welcome. It's so great to have you, Keith, and congratulations on this new legislation. The reparations, of course, aren't going directly into someone's pocket, correct? You have a plan on how that money is going to be spent. Can you explain the plan?
That's right. Reparations is a very complex issue, and it requires a solution that looks beyond a one-time payment or check. The same systemics that allow Confederate statues to go up and disparities in policing to continue are the very same systemics that recycle itself generation after generation. What we're looking at here is there needs to be a step-by-step approach which will break down the problems that we face as a Black community to its root causes and kind of identify some entry points and search for some solutions. From there, we'll be able to take action and reflect upon it and do that again, sort of a wash, rinse, and repeat, so to speak. It's set up to be something that will live beyond the current council and the current city manager to continually look at these issues that are affecting Black individuals in this country. We need to be made whole in areas such as healthcare, education, employment, criminal justice, business ownership, home ownership, and overall equity, and of course, generational wealth, where in all of those categories, Black Americans have disparate numbers.
So just to be specific, are you talking about a fund that will be set aside that people can apply to for things such as education, home ownership, businesses, et cetera? Is that what you're talking about? A separate fund that will then, people have to apply into, or will the fund recognize areas and hand out the money?
So as far as the funding is concerned, there is no specific fund that will be set up. We have a Department of Equity and Inclusion, and we are setting up a reparations commission for our community. As far as the funding is concerned, we will reallocate funding based on the needs of the community. I know that there's a great push right now for reimagining how we do policing in America. And in our local governments, there are some pushes even here to see how we can reallocate funding in that way. The larger picture of funding, though, needs to come from the federal and state governments. I think this is something that America cannot turn its back on right now, and we need to have that conversation on a federal level. I don't believe that will happen with this administration, but we will see what happens with the next.
Do you think, though, are you heartened to see it happen more and more, on the local level?
It is a conversation that can be sparked on the local level, but in order for it to really be something that is going to take hold and really be effective, you have to have support at the federal levels. I don't believe that's going to happen with this administration, but I am hopeful and believe that hopefully the Biden administration would do such and believe they will.
So did the council consider handing out funds to Black families and letting them decide what they wanted to do with it rather than putting it aside to things that the fund determines is valid?
I think that to some people would be the first thing that comes in their mind as what reparations is. But when you look deeper into the systemic issues that we deal with, we need generations to be made whole through systemic action. And the same systemic actions that got us here and have produced policies that have outlived many dead politicians and generations of dead Black Americans has to have a solution set up in the same manner. So just kind of giving money away and checking off a box saying we've made our obligation to Black Americans is simply not the answer. We need something that's going to be systemic in nature. We need not incremental change, but institutional change, things that are going to be embedded into our institutions for a long time to come. Because the hundreds of years that Black Americans have suffered in this country through systemic oppression is not going to be taken away with a single one-time payment, and America saying we've checked our box off and made our obligations to our past. I think America right now is just now becoming awakened to its original sin, and we are definitely going to try to make amends for that.
I understand your point about, long-term change and establishing the basis for that, but why can't it be both? Why can't you also cut a check, to African American families as well as take some of that money and put it towards long-term change?
Oh, it very well could be. It very well could be. I'm not ruling that out. I think, though, that one of the most important parts of the process, though, is to make sure that it is a commitment that is long-term, and local governments, state, federal governments, however this materializes in the long term, doesn't walk away from that commitment with just saying, we gave you some money and so everything should be good, while the systemics that created these issues still reside.
Right. So one council member says that you received numerous comments from people asking, why should I have to pay for what happened during slavery? And that is something that a lot of people ask. So what is the answer to that? And have you received any backlash over this approval for these reparations?
Oh, there's definitely been some backlash. I think any change in American history, anything that happens doesn't happen in a bubble, in a vacuum, and it doesn't happen without some sort of redress from the public. I think when you go back and you look at the civil rights movement of the 60s, we all like to celebrate, say, Martin Luther King to this day, but he was not a celebrated figure in that time, and what was being pushed at that time was definitely not celebrated by a large segment of the American public. So there has been pushback, but I think at this point in time, I've seen way more positive responses to this and way more willing to help fix the systemic issues that we deal with, as opposed to folks who are not educating themselves on the history itself. I've said to a lot of folks a lot of times, I don't believe that it is my specific job to educate the American public or our local public on the history of America. I think it is definitely out there for us to educate ourselves and understand what has actually happened to Black America when you go from chattel slavery to Reconstruction, Jim Crow, the Civil Rights era, urban renewal, redlining, all these different things that have happened that are out there.
Mm-hmm. But also, isn't the argument that we all profit from a country that has accumulated wealth to a large degree because of the work of enslaved African Americans?
Yes, that is absolutely the case. The economic stability of the United States of America is built on the backs of slaves, is built on free labor, and the sustained. I'll say this. There's one of these sayings that Jimmy Baldwin has a saying, which is, do I really want to be integrated into a burning house? And I'd say, what good is having a check for reparations if the bank won't cash it? And that speaks to the systemics that have put Black Americans in this position, and our economic stability at this point is sustained by the initial acts of our country from Black labor.
So now that the council has approved the reparations, when will this go into effect, Councilman?
So we have asked our city manager to report back to us in 6 months on some short, medium, and long-term goals, with the expectation going forward that this is in perpetuity. We will get some biannual reports on this, and we will start to move some of these things forward and start to form our local commission here and work with the community, work with the Black community, work with businesses. Everyone has a hand in this, in making this right. There's the saying of a rising tide lifts all boats, but I'd say a rising tide only lifts all boats if all boats are prepared to ride the wave. And so that's what we're getting ready to do here. We want to make sure that everybody is prepared to ride the wave, specifically those Black Americans in our community.
Yeah, the boats are all fixed up and ready to go. All right, well, Councilman Keith Young, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Y'all, that ain't reparations. If you don't have any type of monetary package attached to it, what he is saying No defense, this is just more of the same, a bunch of programs. Yeah, we're going to put money aside, and people are going to be able to do this and do that. That's just nothing but programs. That's not reparations. And when you talk reparations, you're not talking about no one payment and that's it. Our forefathers weren't out on the plantation just for one day and that was it. They were out there for astronomical amount of time and they were never compensated. So no, whatever reparations monetary would have to be ongoing. And number two, anything without that, to me, what's different than any politician that was running for president saying, we need to do programs, because that's what it sounds like Asheville has. They gave you a program package and they're selling it to you as reparations. Why would anybody want that? Please tell me what you think, ladies and gentlemen. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.